Today is Friday, October 20th. What to know about President Biden's primetime address to the nation last night about the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, and what he wants Congress to do about them. Also, why the U.S. military fired shots on behalf of Israel for what's thought to be the first time during this conflict. And who now plans to testify against former President Trump. Plus, net neutrality may be making a comeback. What new research found about hitting the snooze button in the morning. And a new kind of exchange program where students learn by living in a different kind of American culture than they're used to. Those stories and more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Biden addressed the nation in a rare primetime speech showing support for Israel and Ukraine. He declared this a, quote, inflection point in history, saying terrorists must pay a price for their terror and dictators need to pay a price for their aggression, or else they'll just cause more chaos and embolden others to do the same. So with that, he highlighted the importance of more aid to help America's allies defeat their enemies. Today, Biden is expected to send Congress a funding request for roughly $105 billion to cover assistance for Israel and Ukraine and border security here at home. But it's not clear how that's going to go in Congress. Some Republicans want to send more aid to Israel, saying it's one of America's strongest allies, but they don't support more money for Ukraine at this point in the conflict. Meanwhile, some Democrats are reluctant to send more money to Israel, as they say the U.S. hasn't done enough to help alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Though Biden has announced the U.S. will send $100 million in aid for humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza and the West Bank, saying he's heartbroken by the loss of innocent Palestinian lives. And on that note, the border crossing between Egypt and Gaza that was supposed to open for humanitarian aid is still closed this morning. But CNN reports it's on track to open later in the weekend after road repairs are finished. Once it does, the United Nations says it will inspect the trucks taking food, water, and medicine into Gaza and will help oversee the process. There are still threats the war in the Middle East could enter a new chapter soon. Israeli officials said yesterday they've given the green light to a ground invasion. Military leaders have been prepping soldiers and approving operational plans this week. Of course, even before a ground invasion, airstrikes have already done a lot of damage. Remember, Israel believes Hamas terrorists are held up in tunnels and other hideouts that are surrounded by Palestinians, essentially that Hamas purposely uses civilians as human shields. But Israel is still determined to take out Hamas in retaliation for the most deadly assault against Jews since the Holocaust. So with that, Israeli bombs have been raining down over the Gaza Strip. Reports from news outlets like the AP say some bombs even slammed into parts of Palestinian territory that Israel had declared safe zones. So far, between the Israeli bombings and Hamas's attacks on Israeli civilians, the combined death toll in this war has topped 5,000. That makes this the deadliest war ever in the small strip of land in the Middle East. And there are still fears it could expand into a regional conflict. In fact, just yesterday, an American warship in the northern Red Sea shot down 3 missiles and several drones fired from Yemen toward Israel. A Pentagon spokesman says they were launched by Iranian-backed Houthi militants who have threatened Israel. But they're separate from another Iranian-backed militant group, Hezbollah, that's been operating out of Lebanon, backing Hamas. Still, President Biden, again yesterday, warned Israel not to be blinded by rage and to keep the focus on Hamas. Here we go again. For the 4th day in a row now, the U.S. House is set to vote on a speaker, since so far, no one has been able to get enough votes. And this is really the only issue lawmakers have been able to focus on for the last couple of weeks, since without a speaker, they can't pass any bills. There is a temporary speaker, Congressman Patrick McHenry, but the current rules say he basically only has the authority to oversee a vote for the permanent leader. Yesterday, there was an effort to elevate McHenry to give him power to actually preside over regular business, but there was a lot of backlash from more conservative Republicans. So everything is still at a standstill. The Republican Speaker nominee, Jim Jordan, has been trying to convince more of his colleagues to vote for him this time, and we'll just have to wait and see what they do later today. Prosecutors building a case against former President Trump now have the cooperation of someone from his inner circle. Sidney Powell was a member of Trump's legal team dedicated to challenging the former president's election defeat in 2020. She's one of the 18 people who, along with President Trump, were charged in an election interference case out of Georgia. Well, in a turn of events this week, Powell pleaded guilty, admitting in open court that she orchestrated a scheme to access voting equipment in Georgia, hoping they would validate conspiracy theories that voting machines were flipping votes from Trump to Biden. But here's why this development is such a big deal. On top of her own guilty plea, Powell agreed to testify against other defendants in the case, including former President Trump. In return, she'll only have to serve probation instead of jail time. But Trump's lawyers say he's not worried, that as long as everyone's testimony is truthful, it will only work in his client's favor. So, stay tuned. Forecasters are keeping close eyes on two storm systems churning on opposite sides of the U.S. right now. For example, Hurricane Norma in the Pacific. As of earlier this morning, it's a Category 3 storm headed toward Cabo San Lucas. It's expected to start weakening today and into the weekend as it gets closer to land. Still, it could bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the Baja California peninsula. Then there's Tropical Storm Tammy in the Atlantic, and that one could strengthen as it gets closer to land. It's expected to hit the Leeward Islands today before spreading into the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico over the weekend. Those areas could be in for heavy rain, flash flooding, and mudslides. But of course, meteorologists say even slight turns could change the path of these storms drastically. We have much more news for you coming up. But first, I want to let you know about our sponsor, Trust and Will. I've had a lot of big life milestones lately, from having our child a couple years ago to recently buying a home. And while these things bring us so much joy, they also made me realize we need to do more to secure our future and our child's future. And Trust and Will made this process so easy. My husband and I recently sat down to put together our first will, and I was surprised by how simple yet thorough the process with Trust and Will was. We really liked the guided format. In fact, it only took us about 20 minutes from home, 20 minutes to have peace of mind for years to come. Each will or trust is crafted to be state-specific and customized to your specific needs. Everything from care wishes to nominating guardians for our child, power of attorney, and more. It also ensures that we've now prepared and organized our documents in one place. Of course, bank-level encryption is also appreciated. So gain peace of mind today with Trust and Will. Get 10% off plus free shipping of your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/newsworthy. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. Remember all that debate a few years ago about net neutrality? Well, it looks like it's coming back. To recap, net neutrality is the idea that your internet service provider should not be able to control which websites you can access or how fast you can access them. Supporters say the internet should be an open and level playing field, so big corporations, small startups, popular websites, and lesser-known ones should all get the same access and opportunity to be seen. But on the other side, critics see net neutrality as unnecessary government intervention, which could keep internet service providers from being able to manage their networks efficiently. And telecom companies also say it gets in the way of them offering different service and pricing models, so people just get fewer options. Net neutrality rules first came about during the Obama administration, then they were repealed during the Trump administration, and now the FCC under Biden just voted to move ahead with restoring them. The FCC is now taking public comments, and then will hold a final vote next year. More major players in the crypto industry are now being sued. The New York Attorney General says 3 companies lied to investors and hid their losses in a fraud scheme worth $1 billion. Her lawsuit targets 3 companies: Gemini Trust, Genesis Capital, and Digital Currency Group. The lawsuit says the companies knew they were promoting a program that was risky, but never told investors that, and then tried to pretend everything was fine when it really wasn't. New York's AG says this is just another example of why there needs to be stronger rules in the crypto industry to protect investors. She wants investors refunded, and she wants to keep these companies specifically from doing any more business like this in New York. Well, in response, Gemini said it totally agrees with everything the lawsuit said about Genesis, but that they shouldn't be blamed as they were tricked too. Genesis didn't respond, but its parent company, DCG, called the allegations baseless and said it will fight the lawsuit in court. Stay tuned. The NCAA is now investigating one of the top-ranked college football teams for breaking rules to get an edge on the competition. There are allegations that the University of Michigan football program sent representatives to the games of whoever they were set to play, and that those reps were tasked with stealing the signals other teams use when they decide what play to run. Of course, that's not allowed. In response, the Michigan coach and athletic director have said they were not involved in any kind of off-campus scouting and that this is the first they've ever heard of it. so they're cooperating with the investigation. In the meantime, many other coaches have been advocating for players to be able to communicate through their helmets so they don't have to rely on certain play signals anyway. That's something that's been happening in the NFL for decades now. A new study may help you sleep easy about hitting the snooze button multiple times in the morning. Researchers in Sweden found for most people, it has no negative impact on sleep quality or alertness during the day. In fact, hitting the snooze button might even be a little beneficial for those who prefer it. Participants were asked to snooze for 30 minutes one of the days and wake up right away on the other. And they performed better on cognitive tests the mornings they hit snooze. Though keep in mind, the study did look at people who were already regular snoozers. Researchers also surveyed more people about their morning habits, and they found on average, people who hit the snooze button are generally younger than non-snoozers and more likely to be night owls. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, a quick break for our sponsor, AG1. So the reason I've moved away from a daily multivitamin is because I'm now drinking AG1 every day. And AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that can replace your multivitamin and probiotic and really support whole body health. AG1 makes me feel like I'm ready to take on the day, that I've done something good for my body first thing in the morning. I drink it before I eat anything. And I've noticed a nice boost in energy too. I also appreciate that it's easy to put my AG1 into a to-go cup and take it with me, whether that's around the house, on a walk, or in the car. And that it's just one simple, drinkable habit. 1 scoop of AG1 mixed with water, that's it. Anything that helps me save time and makes me feel good? Yes, please. If you're looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Okay, now back to Feel Good Friday. At a time when the country seems as divided as ever, some young people are building bridges. This past summer, hundreds of new high school graduates signed up for a unique student exchange program. This one happens right here in the U.S., so students can soak in a different kind of American culture than the one they're used to. It's called the American Exchange Project, or AEP for short. The program's co-founder told CBS News the AEP pays for teenagers to spend a week in an American town that's politically, socioeconomically, and culturally very different from the one they grew up in. And so far, at least, it seems to be having the effect he thought it would, with kids saying they've been surprised at how much they have in common with people who seem so different. And they've learned to appreciate and respect others a lot more. The founder is hoping to expand the program so it reaches 1 million students a year by the end of this decade, all for free. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode about going to tourist destinations in the wake of disaster. Is it helpful or disrespectful? And of course, we'll be back on Monday with your next news roundup. For now, thank you for listening and have a great weekend.